have been very lucky, and I've been in a lot of places and been fortunate enough to have some pretty cool things that I've done, but none of them, and I like to open my talks, none of them beats what I'm doing right now. This is probably the coolest job in the state, and I really believe that. It's good to be in Clay County, and I'm no stranger to Clay County because we have a solid rocket motor storage facility at Camp Landing, and we've had multiple occasions to help different regions of the state. That's why I like to get out and talk to groups like yours, because Space Florida is an unusual and very unique kind of asset that's available to you. We were created by the Florida legislature as a for-profit public corporation, which in itself is unusual. But we were given the charter to develop the aerospace industry in the state. And that's a world-leading aerospace goal that we have. We also, though, were made the state spaceport authority with responsibility over 7 areas of the state that are spaceport territory. The unique thing about us is that we were also, on top of that, made an independent special district, which gives us governmental boundary that is statewide. So we can apply the tools that we have as a spaceport authority, just like an airport or a seaport authority, to municipal ground or what I call special dirt anywhere in the state. So we are available as an economic development assist tool to all of you and to any other county that is looking to attract an aerospace client or a space industry client to your region. This is probably the best time that Florida has had to grow its aerospace industry. The industry is consolidating because of tight federal budgets and things like sequestration. As they look to consolidate, because there are going to be fewer new program starts and there are going to be a lot more long lead system extensions for the weapon systems and many of the defense products, companies are looking. They've spent the last 30 years dispersing their assets all around the country for political diversity in Washington. Now they're looking to consolidate, and they want to get out of high-tax regions and get out of expensive regions. And so Florida looks very, very attractive for a myriad of reasons. The scope of what we cover is what I call the space and aerospace industry, but it's space, aviation, and aerospace, and these are horizontal industries that cover a little bit of IT, a little bit of software, materials, structures, just about everything covering through electronics. And so it's a very, very broad industry with deep roots. When I took over Space Florida, we were faced with the imminent retirement of the shuttle. And I swore at that time that I would never want to see Florida again maimed or injured by an overdependence on a large federal program that got canceled. So we set a goal to get beyond launch and to diversify the industry and to build the supply chain deep in the state. And since that time, we've been lucky to get beyond. We're no longer just launching things. We're now building the rockets that we launch. We're going to be soon building satellites. We're building 2 next-generation spacecraft here in Florida. And while all of that is important, it's stuff that goes up, it's hardware, it's infrastructure, but what's really important is, are all the companies that are going to use that infrastructure to make money on the ground. It's telecommunications companies and value-added service companies, and that's the heart of the innovation culture that we want to build in the state. That chart on the right, it's a little bit of an eye chart for you, but it shows some 9 areas of application of space assets to make money with companies on the ground, in agriculture, in GIS applications, in space tourism, in new materials and things like that. The global space economy is significant. Everybody thinks of it as launch industry, but it really is some $334 billion, and over 75% of that is commercial. And that's been that way since 1986. Those are the companies that are using satellites and other space assets to make money. So we're very much focused on the companies that are ground-based. As I say, the rocket's important, And we want to be able to manufacture the things at the pointy end of the rocket, satellites and spacecraft and things like that, and we're moving heavily into that area. But all of the myriad of high technology companies that are taking data streams and images and other value-added products from that infrastructure and applying it to telecom, to internet services, to driving video on TV, they're the companies that make money on the ground, and we're just as easily targeted on those. What's driving the growth of the industry, which has been 7 to 10% a year, depending on what year you're looking at, but certainly consistently, is the fact that over 2 billion people in the world are still without internet service. And yet at the same time, we all have an insatiable demand for bandwidth, which is driving the creation of new satellite systems, large constellations. OneWeb, as an example, wants to put 2,400 satellites up in low Earth orbit to provide worldwide connectivity for internet. Elon Musk is looking at putting close to 5,000 satellites up. And these big constellations are all aimed at interconnecting and supporting the Internet of Things. This global interconnectivity is not only connecting satellites, but connecting airplanes and connecting things on the ground. And again, these are driving new technologies on the ground. We're also going through a transition from robotics to increasingly smart robotics, which become learning machines, and eventually moving to full autonomy, which are going to require this kind of interconnected network to keep control with sense and avoid and good, very accurate guidance systems. And so what we are truly in the long run driving on, even though everybody identifies with the rocket, we want all those companies that are providing those value-added services on the ground. And this is also driving new launch innovators. Today, there are some, by my count, some 15 billionaires who made their money somewhere else and are investing in space. And they're doing that because they see space technology as an enabler to doing other things. And these, we in Florida are attempting to leverage the fact that for the past 50, 60 years, space for us has been federal. But it is increasingly and inevitably more commercial. And what Florida wants to do is to win the future, where we're going to be looking at, from Florida alone, somewhere between 100 to 200 launches, 80% of which will be commercial. It's not the federal government's job to build infrastructure for those, and that's why we exist. The future in Florida, I think, is going to see also a lot of activity by those companies putting things up into low Earth orbit and to lunar activity, to use those as either exploitation of capabilities or exploration and supporting NASA. NASA, when it goes anywhere in the future, is going to have commercial companies providing its logistics support and doing a lot of other things to support our long-range goals. I want to talk briefly about aerospace and Florida's ecosystem for aerospace. I mentioned the three areas that we work in, space, aviation, and aerospace, but that includes manufacturing, MRO, drones, avionics, propulsion systems, all of the things that go along with aerospace. And the Jacksonville area is one of the state's 5 aerospace clusters. When you look at what we have to offer as Florida, the legislature and the governor have done a good job, and many counties have done a good job of streamlining regulation and permitting to make this a very, very favorable environment for manufacturers. Similarly, with respect to tax structures, we're known as a low-tax state, and that is important. We have a very well thought-out transportation and logistics infrastructure, starting with 2 spaceports up at Cecil Field and down at the Cape Canaveral area, some significant number of major airports, 15 deepwater seaports, and a variety of large aerospace companies numbering well over 2,200. And 2,200 companies in aerospace are the significant ones. When you look at the supply chain, Florida's numbers grow to over 19,000 companies doing work in aerospace. And that means local community involvement in the aerospace industry. So going back to this ecosystem, we do have a lot to build with already. Our Achilles heel is workforce. Believe it or not, companies that come here often complain that the primary source for talent is to take their workforce from other companies. And if we allow that to continue, it's going to be a zero-sum game that we will lose. So we're working with Florida's universities, our vocational schools, and even our high schools to try to grow a new breed of workforce through internship programs, through apprenticeship programs. And apprenticeship is something that's been lost in the industry over the past 40 years. We need to build that back in order to be able to satisfy the demand for next generation workforce. We also need to focus on creating an innovation culture in Florida. And that means more and more research related to space and aerospace, and taking some of the discovery science from space and applying it to our agriculture, our water, and other issues. And then this is going to involve our universities. And then at the heart of this, we need to be conscious of building communities which can support all of this. And this is something that Florida has done reasonably well. We have a good quality of life. We care about our schools. And it's not consistent all around the state, but this is an area that is well examined anytime we approach a company to try to relocate in this area. I'm going to talk quickly about the evolution of spaceport capabilities, and I'll show you more pictures than words, but it's some of the projects to show you the kinds of things that we finance. And I want to relate that to what we might be able to do as Space Florida for the local community. First of all, we have under charter a Spaceport Authority role, which includes promoting and growing the industry, setting policy and plans in place that are statewide, ensuring public safety and consistency of operations in all of the spaceport territories, and making sure that we create an environment where next-generation space companies can come to Florida and thrive. Just a few historical things. We recently had a SpaceX launch at Launch Complex 39, and this was the first launch that has occurred at that complex since the shuttle. So it is a significant return of a former federal asset that's been turned over to a private company for launch operations. That same company also reflew its booster stage, which it recovers now. So it takes off, sends a satellite payload on its direction toward the proper orbit, flips around and comes back and lands vertically at the pad or on a barge, and then the company reuses it. And reusability is a game changer for this industry because it will drive down the cost of access to space, and that's critical to eventually being able to support the somewhere between 9,000 and 12,000 satellites that are predicted to be launched in the future. We also, at the Cape, had a landing again, the first landing at the shuttle landing facility since the shuttle, and that's of an Air Force spacecraft that goes up to orbit and does stuff and then comes back. This is just a look at some of the infrastructure, and I know that the county is looking at doing a GIS study of its assets so that it has a good knowledge of its property offerings, their environmental conditions. We've done the same thing at the Cape by looking at our roads, our utilities infrastructure, and then all of the transportation routes, the bridges and the roads and their condition. This is a look at the Cape Canaveral Spaceport and the launch pads that are in place today. Within 5 years, I went too far, this is what we'll have. So it is a significant projected growth for Florida's spaceport capability in that spaceport, and there's no reason why we can't have that kind of growth up at Cecil Field and anywhere else where there's spaceport territory. If I can see correctly, this is the manufacturing complex, a project for Blue Origin. They're building what is now an almost 800,000 square foot facility to manufacture their rockets. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see what that looked like back in January. The picture on the lower left is where it is now, and they expect to be finished by the year end and begin operations in that facility. So they're moving at light speed to build that facility. Similarly, we announced a project for OneWeb, and OneWeb is a company that is putting 2,400 satellites in orbit for global interconnectivity. They're partnered with Airbus, as well as a number of other major players, Intelsat, Coca-Cola, Virgin Galactic, a number of other major players. Richard Branson's an investor in the company. And for the first time, Florida will be building those satellites in this facility. What's significant about that is that it typically takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months to build a satellite today. And it's a large, very careful process. They intend to build 15 a week. So it shows the impact of advanced manufacturing methods and the new kind of workforce that we want to be able to grow and attract. And that's at the heart of why we need to train a new breed of workforce. This is Launch Complex 36, which is the launch complex that will be built for Blue Origin. They have also started construction there, and this is what we hope that will look like when it's finished. This is a picture of Launch Complex 41. This is operated by United Launch Alliance, and they're the ones that are using the solid rocket motors that are stored and processed at Camp Landing. This is Launch Complex 46, which the state is getting ready for an Air Force operationally responsive space launch in this summer. This is the first time in many, many years that this launch complex has been used. Space Florida is restoring it, not only to attract more Minotaur launches, which the Air Force will fly, but also future small rocket launches to handle some of the volume of those satellites that will be going up into low Earth orbit. On the lower left-hand corner, you see a picture of a NASA test flight, and that's called the NASA Ascent Abort Test. They're going to be testing the escape system on the next generation Orion spacecraft, which will carry men to lunar orbit and eventually to Mars. And this is Launch Complex 40, the facility also that will, this is being used by SpaceX. This is the site where they had an explosion back a while ago, and it's being rebuilt. So that they'll be operating 2 sites, which will enable them to get to those 50 launches a year that I predict they'll get to soon. This is the shuttle landing facility, which the state has taken over, and Space Florida is developing it, plus some land around it to make it available for next-generation space companies that take off horizontally and go out over the ocean and can turn in any direction so that they can launch into geostationary orbit or launch polar, which gives Florida a significant new capability once that becomes operational. And we have a number of clients that we're trying to attract there. And this is also that same facility with some of the near-term development. We have the charter to plan the future for Florida's spaceport capabilities. And while I showed you a lot of pictures of launch pads and significant things that are part of the space infrastructure, we care just as much about local community supply chain and businesses. And for every one of these companies that we bring into the state, the key is to bring their supply chain along with them and to make sure that we have the workforce to support them. So we really are looking at how the Cape has to evolve over the next 10 years. As we start to move to 200 launches, we're going to disrupt air traffic. We're going to be flying pedestrians to low Earth orbit activities, whether it's for an adventure tour or for conduct of research. There'll be new platforms put into space to support private sector research. People will be going to the lunar surface to perhaps do mining or exploitation of some attribute of those bodies. There are already companies looking at capturing or landing on asteroids to mine platinum and other materials that we know are there. So there's a lot of new horizons for the space industry, and our vision is that Florida be the equivalent of London going back several centuries, where they were the enabling port that opened up trade in other parts of the world. There's no reason why Florida cannot be the point of embarkation and the enabler for global space commerce. And that is the goal that we set in this vision document. To do that, though, we need a new and evolved management model for management of the Cape. It can no longer be managed solely by the federal government. It's not their job, and the two agencies that are there have different missions. So what we might envision, and I'm not saying that it has to be the state, but it might well be some evolved management model that includes a federal-state partnership. It might be something like the Transportation Authority that took over Reagan National Airport and Dulles National Airport, which at one time were managed by the federal government. But we need to think about what's required for Florida to win in the future. Where we're headed, and this is a cartoon, but it is to a world in which everything is interconnected, and businesses are driven by interconnectivity and the ability to marry their design shop with their manufacturing floor. And logistics companies are looking at every aspect of their operation, from point of pickup of packages to delivery, where drones are delivering packages for us. There are 3 flying cars under test right now by major companies. I know there are a larger number than that. As we learn to control drones, we're going to use the interconnectivity and the guidance and the sense and avoid technologies that are built into them to make flying cars possible. So you'll call your Uber, and it'll appear in front of your house and pick you up and take you where you need to go, but it'll go through the air, and that'll relieve some of the road traffic that we're likely to have. That stuff is not far away. Airbus is testing a vehicle like that today. We need to think ahead and prepare Florida's industry, our educational systems, and our workforce to do that. And I've zipped through these charts so that hopefully it's 1 o'clock, but that there might be some time for questions, and I welcome them. It's okay. It's a pleasure.
Mr. DiBello mentioned several things there at the end of his presentation that I just have to ask your indulgence and let me address real quick. And thank you, Rusty. This is why you bring as many people related to the topic together to be able to address your specific questions. Talked about the workforce and the aging workforce and workforce development. Economic Development Corporation, St. Johns River State College, Clay County School System are all working very closely in the Chamber of Commerce to develop this workforce. Just this couple weeks ago, week and a half ago, we were meeting with the folks at VACCON. St. Johns River State College is considering a production technician certification to address the certification issue. Clay County Schools, Oakleaf High School has an aviation academy. Clay County Schools already have the academy programs in place. If you haven't been by Oakleaf High School, there is literally a Navy trainer plane parked out in the front yard out at Oakleaf High School. Mobro Marine, correct me if I think I'm right about this. The other day when the rocket landed on a barge, it was a barge from Mobro Marine, which is based right here in Green Cove Springs. So all of these various tentacles are connected here. Speaking of the Clay County school system, I did neglect to recognize Ashley Gilhausen. Ashley is here, one of our school board. Hey, Ashley. My apologies for that. And I also want to, again, thank our title sponsor, Georgia Pacific. Thank you very much for helping support this event today. And I want to also take just a second. I know Terry has received multiple accolades for his retirement, but thank you very, very much personally for helping this organization. He's been a staunch supporter of the organization, has a multi-year commitment, and I appreciate it. You've been a wonderful partner for us. We'll close. If you look at the back of your program, we have a few more dates of upcoming events. Jacksport is going to be making a presentation here in Clay County. Did we get that arranged for the BCC room, Stephanie? That Jacksport thing? I think this we'll announce that if you have interest in the deepening of the port and that sort of stuff. And then our Q3 luncheon, Regions Bank is going to be the title sponsor. Thank you, Jan, for our Q3 luncheon on August 24th. If you think you'll be attending that, registration is available. You can go to our website, chooseclay.com. And again, thank you very much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.